The last thing I want to talk about, Dillon Brooks news. Sean Strania, my colleague over at The Athletic, he reported earlier today that Dillon Brooks will, I believe it was, not be on the Memphis Grizzlies next season under any circumstances. My guess on that was that the under any circumstances was Sham's phrasing, not necessarily the phrasing of somebody else within whatever sourcing that he talked about. When you saw this report, Mark, what was your immediate reaction?
Wow. Yeah, basically like the Kobe White at the draft. No, I mean, I think what was so difficult in this entire thing is like seeing it go from where we were at, a year ago to where it's at now. Saying I'm not surprised sounds like asinine. Like I think the wording was surprising. But it culminating to here, especially after we got Taylor talking about during a presser before whatever game. I can't remember which game it was, but talking about how they needed to be more focused and not as distracted. And it was very clearly like we knew exactly who he was talking to. And then Dillon has like the quote after the game, like, oh, I'm going to keep doing me. Like I'm not going to stop being me. I don't want to misquote him, but it was along those lines. And then obviously that continued to carry on. And yeah, so I do want to add too, as much as I don't love whatever the wording was from whoever decided to put that out there. Not even that I don't love the wording. Like that's just extremely strong wording without having your name attached to it. That's what I'll say. I do like, I don't know. I think that there's just, that stuff can be tricky, with the anonymity in who's releasing things. But I think people who are looking at this as Dillon Brooks got scapegoated is kind of missing this just for the sake of a talking point, if we're being real. I do very much think that it is fair to not love how that came out, but also worth noting, okay, Dillon was very much so a distraction. Dillon was also awful in this series and really struggled much of the season. I would also point people to go read the Michael Cole story from over at Commercial Appeal, who covers the Memphis Grizzlies. He does an awesome job. He wrote a really great story on this as well, basically giving a lot more backstory to this. Dillon Brooks wants a bigger role than he had this season. His usage really dropped this year. His field goal attempts dropped this year. He gave very pointed quotes about how he doesn't want to be a role player, how he's capable of doing a lot more, how he could have had more plays run for him during the series. That is very much not how I view Dillon Brooks in this capacity and what he's capable of or what he should have been getting with Memphis. And I think, you and I both talked about how weird his role was this season, how it kind of got jerked all over the place. And especially like when they were dealing with injuries, I mean, he had to carry the offense at times and that was ugly. And but I also just want to say too, like it's in a really weird spot of this team very much needed Dillon Brooks and relied on him a ton the last couple of years. And I think this is the first season where they really hit a point where it's like, we need something different that isn't what you're bringing, at least not in the capacity that you want to. And so I know that's a million different thoughts at the same time, but the last thing I would wrap out on that is I saw a lot of takes of like, I wouldn't sign Dillon. Like, I don't want Dillon Brooks on my team for, any amount of money, this and that. And like, I think that Dillon 1000% needs to do some soul searching. Like that goes without saying. But I also think like he is an all defense level defender. I think with his shot selection reined in, that's still an incredibly impactful rotation player. Whether or not he wants to be that, that's up to him to find out. I wonder what the market's going to be like. I do think it's going to be a lot more than a lot of people thought or wanted to put out on the timeline today or just in speaking today. And then the last thing I want to hit on, just in general, I do wish that some of the language and stuff that got used in decisions here are things that we talked about with people who actually do bad things instead of somebody who just talks a lot of bullshit. Like, that's, I think, what I came away most frustrated with about today. Like, okay, well, where is this for dudes who are very clearly doing things that are bad that get swept under the rug by everybody in every facet in basketball? So yeah, that's it. It is that. I don't want to say it is what it is because that's too callous for me. But yeah. I do think that's something that very much needs to change and be better.
So the first thing that came to mind to me was, hey, remember when Draymond Green said earlier this season, the dynasty starts after you, not with you, to Dillon Brooks in a podcast?
I forgot about that. Wow, that is
unbelievable shit crazy. From Draymond Green. That is some incredible trash talk. Unbelievable. Just the king of our time, Draymond Green. The second thing I thought of was that DeMichael Cole story, obviously. And Dillon Brooks on Sunday was quoted as saying, I was just there to 3-and-D, shoot, and play defense. I got way more to my game than that. I don't think he does on the NBA level, just to be real about it. I don't. I think he is a 3-and-D guy that takes a lot of very difficult pull-up mid-range jumpers that just absolutely do not work for him. I think that he is not a good enough shooter on those shots to be taking as many of them as he does. Having said that, he is one of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA. And a team like Dallas should love him. Like, if I was Dallas, I would be trying to get a sign and trade for Dillon Brooks going. Like, I would love that. That makes a whole world of sense. Give them all sorts of attitudes, some defensive energy, some aggression, the ability to move Kyrie off the ball, the ability to limit difficult matchups for Kyrie and Luka. Team like that would be great. There's a number of them out there that would be valuable. 100%. I think that Dillon Brooks will get paid by somebody this summer. Who that'll be, I don't know. What that number will be, I don't know. It could just be like a mid-level. I think that's a very real potential outcome for him. He is him just getting the mid-level from somebody. What I will also say is somebody who works in this industry and reports and generally tries not to report, frankly. I tend to know more than what I say on things because I don't like the stress that comes with reporting, frankly. A lot of the things that come across my desk or proverbial desk, my phone, let's say realistically, do not necessarily have a strategic motive to them. And I think that often when reports like this happen, people try to ascribe strategy to things. And this isn't me saying that like from the Shams perspective. This is me saying this from like, you know, what camp perspective benefits from this, right? I think Shams is perfectly reasonable to have done what he did here. Like, this is not, I think Shams did great here. I have no beef with him in any way, shape, or form. Shams did what he is supposed to do in this job. People try to ascribe a strategic motive or goal to these reports often, because we're so used to, for instance, the NFL draft, where the NFL draft is an absolute shit show. And these football teams, I think, are just absolute like crazy people who try to smokescreen everything. And I don't really get why they do it. It happens in the NBA. Smokescreens certainly happen in the NBA. I don't think that everything is as strategic as people tend to think it is. Let me give you an example, right? I'm not saying this is the way Shams got it. I have no idea how Shams got this story. This is just me saying that a way that this could have happened theoretically, right? Of course, all of the players on the Memphis Grizzlies would be aware of this, that Dillon Brooks is not returning to the Memphis Grizzlies. It's not uncommon for teams to let players know during exit interviews that they won't be back next year. It's a reality of the situation. It is very possible that a player could have gone to their agent and said, oh shit, man, Dillon's not going to be back next year. And then Shams finds out about it that way, right? Other reporters find out about it that way. And then they go about, confirming it from multiple different angles in any way, shape, and form that you can confirm it as a reporter. Again, I think that totally everything Shams did here is perfect. But that's not like a strategic thing. That hypothetical example is not a strategic way of this news getting out, right? That's just like a player telling an agent, like, hey, yeah, this is going to happen. And then the agent, bullshitting with the reporter saying, hey, yeah, like this is the thing that's happening. And then it kind of leaking out that way. In this case, it was strange to me to see that so many people immediately ascribed this as negative toward the Memphis Grizzlies. The way it came out was a little bit weird. And because Dillon Brooks is such a lightning rod, it became a lightning bolt of news coverage, right? And it became a storm. I don't think this actually benefits the Memphis Grizzlies at all for this to be out there. In fact, I think it could actually hinder their potential offseason plans, because what they could do theoretically is they could try and involve Dillon Brooks in like a sign-in trade in some way. But with this being out there now, like, is Dillon going to acquiesce to trying to help out the Memphis Grizzlies? Maybe not, right? Like that might not be a thing. If he wants to get to a specific spot that doesn't have cap space, maybe it will, but it might make that a little bit more complicated now. Typically leaks that come out, in this circumstance, if you're trying to ascribe blame in some way, you would be ascribing that blame based off of strategy in some way. I don't think that it benefits Memphis for this to come out in any way. So I don't know why people would think, the front office, they leaked this just to say a fuck you and a last like screw you to Dillon Brooks. That doesn't line up to me. Just logically, that doesn't line up to me. And obviously it doesn't line up necessarily for like Dillon Brooks's side to want this out there in some way, right? You want to keep leverage against opposing teams to, even if it's true that Memphis is not going to re-sign Dillon Brooks, you want to be able to hold that card over an opposing team because they have his bird rights. And them having his bird rights means that they can exceed the salary cap to sign him, which means they can sign him to the biggest number. So doesn't necessarily help anyone here that this is out. So I say all of this to say, I don't know why there was a rush from media people to be like, oh my God, why is this out there? Or like, oh my God, the Memphis Grizzlies, they absolutely screwed Dillon Brooks here. We have no idea who the sourcing was on this story. I certainly don't. I don't want to ask Shams. Like, I don't want to know that. Shams wouldn't tell me, and he shouldn't tell me. Like, I think that there is such a rush to look for a strategic angle in reporting oftentimes. And there is such a rush to put on the tinfoil hat and go full conspiracy theorist in some way that sometimes like people try and have these ideas that are not always true. And I don't know if something is true. I don't know what's true in this circumstance. I'm just saying that this news being out does not benefit the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, just straight up, they got shit on all day from media people, and it like actually does not help their like long-term potential offseason plans. So why in the world, like, why is everybody jumping to that conclusion? I guess is what I would ask you, Mark.
I mean, it just that's not typically how things get reported, you know, or not even like, or I should say, like, that's just not typically the wording you see. Like, that is, that was different. So I think that's why people jumped on it. I didn't really know what to make of it when it first came out, other than, holy shit, you know, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else to add on that, because I don't, exactly like you're mentioning, I think there's a lot more ins and outs to it than I know about. So it's definitely something.
Yeah. And again, I want to be clear here. I think Shams did a great job here. Like, this is news. This is absolutely his job. Like, shout out to Shams. Him reporting this news is great. Like, anything I say here is not about Shams giving the initial report. The initial report is great. It's about the reaction to the initial report and trying to ascribe these beliefs from other people. And I don't know why there was a jump to conclusion to shit on Memphis in this circumstance, when it doesn't benefit them and we have no idea who the sourcing is in this circumstance. Right? That seems logical.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Dillon Brooks, like, do you have a fit for Dillon Brooks moving forward that you like?
At the moment, no. I feel like it, you know, once that's the kind of thing where, like, especially with how much things can change in the off season, I'd need to see it before I have a feel. But right now, no, I'd probably say no.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to find like a phenomenal fit for him. I I do wonder, like, what if you put him in Miami? Like, I wonder if that culture like would actually kind of like, I don't know, kind of even it out a little bit in some way. I don't know. I'm just like spitballing here. I think Dallas like really fits. Like, I actually really love that idea. That was my one that I was like, oh yeah, this makes a world of sense. Like, Dallas goes for it. But yeah, I thought the news cycle today was a bit bizarre and kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit more. And I think that Mark's 100% right, by the way. The thing that was very strange was, it's not strange, I guess, to like get off jokes at Dillon Brooks' expense. Dillon Brooks has been, he has embraced being a wrestling heel at this point, right? So like, when you do that, you open yourself up to criticism, like, undeniably. But I agree with Mark. Keep the same energy. For instance, if Miles Bridges signs somewhere this offseason, right? Like, go harder at Miles Bridges by all means, please. Based off of what he, pled to in his agreement. So I agree with Mark wholeheartedly there.